Hi everybody. Today I'm going to be making a couple of cruciferous vegetables. You know, in the book How Not to Die, that's the one I used for the 21-day challenge. There's a lot about cruciferous vegetables and how we should have one serving a day. And a serving's really not that much. A half a cup of leafy vegetables or a cup of raw leafy vegetables. Half a cup was cooked leafy vegetables. Or a half cup of raw or cooked non-leafy vegetables, like Brussels sprouts, or some broccoli sprouts, fourth of a cup, or even a tablespoon of horseradish is considered a cruciferous vegetable. And why is this so hard to do? I think because from what I hear, people are not that crazy about cruciferous vegetables. People have bad memories of overcooked Brussels sprouts that taste real strong, or cabbage, overcooked cabbage that tastes really kind of awful, or even cauliflower that's terrible and doesn't have much flavor to it, or is overcooked or undercooked. Usually for me, excuse me, get some water. Usually for me the problem is the cauliflower is not cooked enough. Sorry about that. I've been served cauliflower steak, and they call it cauliflower steak in restaurants, that was so undercooked it was just like hard as a rock. So today I'm going to make something with Brussels sprouts. I've got them already trimmed. When you get the Brussels sprouts, tear off any leaves that are brown or don't look good, and then cut the bottoms off because you don't want to eat the bottom part. It's really hard. And then you have nice little trimmed Brussels sprouts. And I'm going to just put them in this bowl. I've washed them, drained them, trimmed them, and they're ready to go. And then I'm going to make a marinade. The marinade I'm using, I actually adapted this marinade a little bit. It's almost the same from the Esselstyns. And recently, they had a video about things they were doing, you know, for the new year. And one of the things they were making, they made cauliflower and Brussels sprouts. And I was watching very closely because that's something that I don't even have a lot of good recipes for it that I really like. So I thought, well, I'll see what they have and see if it's any different from what I have. And they had a Brussels sprouts recipe that called for, and I'm going to put it in as I say it, their recipe called for 3 tablespoons of maple syrup. I cut it down to 2, and you could probably even cut it down to less than that, but I cut it down to 2 because 3 just seemed like too much. I didn't need it to be that sweet. And then 2 tablespoons of tamari. I have low sodium soy sauce. And I think 2 tablespoons is about right, but you could cut that down too. You could cut that down to 1 because, face it, soy sauce and tamari, they all have sodium, you know, 590 milligrams of sodium per tablespoon. So if you're really watching sodium, maybe you don't even want to use that much. You just want to use a little bit less. So using 2 tablespoons, for me that's okay because I'm not going to eat all of these in one sitting. Then I added a tablespoon of tahini. They didn't have that in theirs. They had no tahini. But I added that because I just wanted to. I like the flavor of that. And then there was no water or anything like that. There was a little onion powder and garlic powder. Not too much. So about a teaspoon of onion powder. Or I think they used onion flakes. And then garlic powder, only half a teaspoon of garlic powder. And a little bit of black pepper. What did I do with the black pepper? I had it out, here it is. And so I'm just gonna do a little less, like 1/4 of a teaspoon of black pepper. Whoops, put it in the wrong place. That happens. Okay, and then teaspoon of black sesame seeds. We're gonna sprinkle the sesame seeds on top. I'm not gonna put them in just yet. So that was pretty simple. That was just a few ingredients. And the thing is, if you try to roast Brussels sprouts and don't put anything on them, like just put them dry on a sheet pan, you know, and you think, well, I used to put olive oil on my Brussels sprouts, but now I'm just going to roast them plain with nothing on them. If you've ever tried that, what you find out is you end up with something that's almost inedible. And then you think, well, why is that? Why can't I roast things oil-free? You know, I should be able to roast things oil-free. You know, they say don't use oil in your food, and I don't want to use oil. The reason is cooking in the oven is a dry heat method. You know, it's a dry heat. There's no moisture really. So if you put something in the oven that's dry, and it's a dry heat method, it's just going to be dry. I'm sorry to say, that's just the only explanation I can tell you. So then you end up with hard as a rock, dry, tasteless Brussels sprouts. And nobody wants to eat them because they just don't taste good. So then I've seen recipes that use, and I'm going to turn them all the same way. I'm going to put them all face down. Then I've seen recipes where they just take the Brussels sprouts and coat them with balsamic vinegar and bake them in the air fryer of the oven. I tried that and it was so bitter. To me, it was inedible. I could not stand it. So a way that I've roasted the vegetables in the past is I just make a little bit of a tahini and vegetable broth marinade, and that works pretty good. And then maybe put a little soy sauce in there. So then we're going, well, that was way too much sesame seeds, but we're going to put about a teaspoon of sesame seeds on here. Don't look at this one that has too many. It kind of poured out, but that's okay. In the end, it'll be fine. I'll sprinkle some. So don't put too many sesame seeds. And then that's it. Then we put this in the oven for 30 minutes. And then it's done. And I'm not going to put it in the oven just yet because I'm going to make the cauliflower, and then we'll put both in the oven. So with the cauliflower, this one's a little different. And the cauliflower recipe calls for cauliflower steaks. So just to recap, the main change I made to the Esselstyn's recipe is I cut back on the maple syrup. They had 3 tablespoons, I used 2. I added tahini. I used low sodium soy sauce instead of tamari because I was out of low sodium tamari. And that was about it. And then it's cooked at 400 for 30 minutes. And I made this before and it was really good. I really enjoyed it, which is why I wanted to make it for you because, again, we want to have 1 serving of cruciferous vegetables a day for the daily dozen. And this is a good one. It tastes good. I think most people would like it. And that's one of the things people have a hard time getting in their daily dozen, in my experience. Okay, so I'm going to turn the cauliflower into some steaks, meaning I'm just going to slice it. Try to keep it together as much as possible, which isn't that hard to do. And you don't want to cut them too thin because if you cut them too thin, they won't stay together. And you don't want to cut too much off the bottom core of the cauliflower, or you won't have anything to hold it together. And even so, you can see that it's not that easy to get it to stick together, but I did it pretty well. Whoops. So this one just kind of fell apart, and that's okay. You know, we can still brush the glaze over our cauliflower, and this one also fell apart. So if it gets to the outside and you didn't leave enough, then you end up with cauliflower florets instead of a cauliflower steak, and that's okay. I'm going to use these in my salad because raw cauliflower is good and you can use it in a salad. So I'm not going to let that deter me from making this recipe. I have enough. I have, you know, enough cauliflower, cooked cauliflower. I could also just put it on my pan and cook it if I wanted to. So, you know, that's fine. But let me clean off my board. Whoops, some of it fell on the floor. So now let's make our marinade. And this marinade is a little bit different. It calls for hummus. So I have some hummus here. And this is a hummus I get from the grocery store. It's the brand is Habiza. And Habiza hummus, I like it because it doesn't have any olive oil in it. And a lot of the hummus that you get in the grocery store has added olive oil, but this one doesn't. So a 1/2 cup of hummus. I'm not going to measure it because I kind of know how much 1/2 cup is by looking at it. So that looks like about 1/2 cup of hummus. And you know, if you're making something like this and it's for you and you're not in a recipe contest, And you can eyeball things. You don't have to measure everything out. If you're not sure, then of course measure it out. And if it will make a big difference in how your dish turns out, then you probably want to measure it out. But for me, a lot of times, you know, I'm just like, I'm not going to measure that. Now, the Esselstyn's recipe called for 1/2 cup of nutritional yeast. I never put that much nutritional yeast in anything, so I put 1/4 cup. You know, sometimes I look at a recipe and I think, for my taste, I'm not going to like that, so I'm not going to do it. 3 tablespoons of water. I have a little measuring cup here. So I'm going to put in 3 tablespoons of water. And then 3 tablespoons of balsamic vinegar. I think I'm going to cut that down to 2 because I think my balsamic vinegar is kind of expensive. It's one of the pricier ones. It's the gold, what's it called? Something gold, balsamic vinegar, black gold. And it was kind of pricey, so I'm not even going to put it in the cup because I don't want it to have to get it out. So I'm putting 2 tablespoons of the black gold, really nice balsamic vinegar in there. Their recipe called for 3 tablespoons, but again, I'm not the person who loves a lot of vinegar, so I adjusted it for my taste. 2 tablespoons of balsamic vinegar, 3 tablespoons of water, and then the nutritional yeast. And if it's too thick, like this seems pretty thick, I might thin it down with a little bit of water, but I think they just spread it on like a paste and then sprinkled it with smoked paprika. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to just spread it on the cauliflower and sprinkle it. Oh, they put scallions in here. Here's my smoked paprika. I have some scallions I already cut up. So I think the scallions were placed on top, so I don't think they get mixed in. So I'm going to have those ready, and then I'll show you what I'm going to do here. I'm just going to take the paste. Remember, it's just hummus and some nutritional yeast, water, balsamic vinegar, and it's made into a paste. Actually, I could taste it. Could just give it a little taste. That's good. It's a little strong in the nutritional yeast. But remember, I'm not a person that likes a lot of nutritional yeast. I think as it cooks, it'll get better. But we'll see how this turns out. We cooked this at 450. 450, that's pretty hot for 30 minutes. So I'm going to pause this here in a minute, and I'm going to cook this and then come back when it's cooked, and we can decide how it is. I might think about adding red pepper flakes on this, because I like red pepper flakes to make it a little spicy. So before I put it in the oven, I'll put some red pepper flakes on some, but not on all of it. And this was just enough to cover the amount of things I have on my tray here. There's a little bit left in here, but not much. And then we can sprinkle it with the scallions. Remember, I had scallions that I cut up. These are green onions. I just washed them and cut them up. And then I have the smoked paprika. Great. I'd forgotten that this lid is hard to get off. Here it goes. Good. Not as hard as I thought. I'll take a little spoon. We don't want to put, smoked paprika has a really strong, here, that's not coming off the spoon. I'm going to sprinkle it with my hands. Another thing that I don't go crazy over that a lot of people do is smoked paprika, because to me it's really strong. And I've had some dishes kind of ruined by it before where the smoked paprika was overpowering. So I'm the kind of person that will put less than what a recipe calls for. And then last but not least, I have some cilantro. The Esselstyn's recipe called for parsley. And I don't like parsley as much as I like cilantro. Some people hate cilantro and would rather have parsley. So use parsley then, but I like cilantro better. So I have these two things, and I'm going to put them in the oven. So remember, I have the marinated Brussels sprouts, and then I have the cauliflower. And I'm going to put the Brussels sprouts go in this oven 30 minutes. And then I have an oven in my kitchen. My kitchen is in another kitchen, and I'm going to take that in there, but I won't do this on camera. And I'll come back in 30 minutes, and we will sample these dishes. So see you back here in a few minutes. Okay, I've just gotten everything out of the oven, and I have the cauliflower with not really a marinade, but a topping, and I'm going to put one piece on my plate. And then over here, it's been out of the oven for a while so I can touch it. This is the Brussels sprouts. I got them out a couple minutes early because they looked like they were done. You don't want to overcook them, and a lot of times timing depends on the size of the food. And these Brussels sprouts were not gigantic, and they're cut in half, so I didn't leave them in 30 minutes. I think I took them out at 25 minutes. So I've got them on my plate, and then let's try them. That's the only way you're going to know if something is truly good is if you taste it. So Brussels sprouts. I've made these before, and I knew they were good, so I had a feeling that would be good again, and it is. And I did add some red chili flakes, and the red chili flakes give it a little bit of a kick, and it needed that. And then I did, I'm going to cut the cauliflower steak, because the way we really know if it's done is if we can cut into it and it's tender. Because remember, we don't want it to be hard as a rock. You know, I was served cauliflower steak in a fancy restaurant, and it looked like this. It came, and then I tried to cut into it, and it was like, I could not cut it. It was so hard. It was not good. It was like if someone served you a giant piece of raw cauliflower on a plate as a hot dish, but it really wasn't a hot dish. This is actually pretty good. That topping has a really good flavor from the hummus and the balsamic vinegar. Now I would add a little black pepper, freshly ground black pepper, and for me, just a tiny bit of ground sea salt. I do use a little salt. That gave it just that little bit more. Okay, so just to recap, today I made cruciferous vegetables. I made the Brussels sprouts using the Jane Esselstyn's recipe, which I modified a little bit, not quite as sweet. Added a little red chili flakes, cooked it a little bit less than she said. And then with the cauliflower, I did modify the cauliflower recipe by adding half the amount of nutritional yeast, because I'm not a big nutritional yeast fan, less smoked paprika, cilantro instead of parsley, and 2 tablespoons of balsamic vinegar instead of 3. So what I'm going to do is, with this video, I'll post my recipes. And if you want to see them make these dishes, you can go to Jane Esselstyn's YouTube channel, and she and her mom, Anne, I love those two, they make them on there. So, you know, I figure if it's good enough for the Esselstyns, it's good enough for us. And remember also, the whole purpose of me doing this demonstration today is I want you to be able to fulfill the suggestion every day of eating cruciferous vegetables. And this is a good way to do it, and it's really delicious. So thank you for watching, and my next video, I'm not sure what it's going to be, but Saturday is the day I'll post a video. It may be something I've done in the past because I'm going to be busy all day at a conference. So I may post one of my most popular YouTube recipes for you to look at that day, since I'm not going to be home to be able to cook. But I'll post some kind of video on Saturday. All right, thanks everybody for watching this. Bye-bye for now.